Hi guys, in this video we will be talking about Napoleon Bonaparte, Emperor of France. We are going to identify the causes and effects of the French Revolution, and we will also explain the impact of Napoleon Bonaparte and the Napoleonic Wars on Europe. By the time that we are done, you will be able to describe Napoleon's rise and fall to power. So let's talk about Napoleon's background. Napoleon was born to a middle-class family, and when he was 9 years old, he was sent to a military school. By the time that he was 20, he had graduated military school and become lieutenant in the army, and at 24 years old, he had become brigadier general, which was very unlikely for someone that young, but he was a very dedicated person and hardworking, and so he rose up quickly through the ranks. In 1795, he helped save the Directory from being overthrown, and for that he was nicknamed the Savior of France. Napoleon gained political control because he was a very well-respected general. In 1798, he had taken his army to Africa in an attempt to stop trade routes of the British. They failed at capturing Egypt, and when he goes home, he's actually surprised to find that he's considered a hero in France. And in 1799, he had rallied enough support to overthrow the Directory using the military, and he is going to name himself first consul. Some of the characteristics of Napoleon's personality include that he's very determined and power hungry. He is considered a military genius. He's very dedicated to his work, very meticulous, likes things done perfectly. He was self-sufficient, rarely relied on anybody, and demanding of himself and of his soldiers. But he was still very highly respected by his soldiers. He was respected because he kept his army well supplied and well fed. He used to say that an army marched on its stomach, so he took care of his men, and for that they respected him greatly. He also was a brilliant general because of his military strategy. He was able to look for gaps in the enemy lines and then concentrate artillery fire on them so that he could divide the enemy and then conquer them one piece at a time. When Napoleon came to power, he began to build up an empire. He conquered most of Europe, including the Netherlands, Belgium, parts of Italy, and Germany. But that wasn't enough for Napoleon. He wanted to take over all of Europe. Here you see a map of Europe in 1810. This is Napoleon's influence at the height of his power. The countries that are numbered 1 through 8 were controlled by France, and either directly or indirectly, so he did name a lot of his family and friends to the thrones of these countries. His brother, for example, was the King of Spain, and the countries that are numbered 9 through 12 are influenced by France. They're allied with France. The only countries that remain independent of France are Russia, Turkey, Montenegro, Sicily, Sardinia, Portugal, and of course Great Britain, which Napoleon really wanted to take control of. Eventually, Napoleon will be crowned emperor, and his actions during the coronation became very symbolic. Instead of allowing the Pope to place the crown on his head, symbolizing that God had chosen Napoleon as the emperor of France, Napoleon took the crown himself and placed it on his own head, symbolizing that he had earned the right to be emperor and no one gave it to him. Napoleon was in love with a woman named Josephine, who he made his wife after meeting her 6 months prior. She was his first wife and true love. Josephine was a bit older than him and did not reciprocate that love. She was unfaithful to him many times while he was away on his military campaigns, which left Napoleon very brokenhearted. Eventually, because Josephine could not produce a son to be the heir to the empire, she agreed to a divorce, and Napoleon married another woman who did give him a son. Napoleon's tried really hard to conquer Great Britain, but failed. At the Battle of Trafalgar, his navy fought the British Navy and was defeated outside the shores of Spain, and that is really going to deplete the French Navy and some of the army, making him weak and vulnerable. Napoleon then turned his sights to Russia and tried to invade. During the Russian campaign, he took 600,000 men into Russia and lost about 500,000. They found that as they went into Russia, the Russians refused to fight and instead fled and burned everything that they left behind, so that the French army did not have any supplies or shelter to help them through the winter. Of the 600,000 men he took, only 100,000 returned. The great majority either died from the winter conditions or starvation, or were captured and killed along the way, or they even deserted the army. Napoleon, when he was captured, was exiled to the island of Elba off the coast of Italy, and he was forced to give up his power to King Louis XVIII. Napoleon rallied enough support to escape from Elba and came back to France, rebuilt his military because the soldiers were loyal to him and not to the king. That time that he was in power for the last time is known as the 100 Days. During that time, King Louis fled because he feared for his life, and the neighboring countries decided to come together and stop Napoleon one last time. So at the Battle of Waterloo, which is in Belgium, in 1815, Napoleon was defeated for the last time by the British and the Prussian forces. Napoleon then was sent a little further off the coast of Africa to an island called St. Helena, where he spent his remaining days. Napoleon left a lasting legacy in France and in Europe. His law code, the Napoleonic Code, guaranteed civil liberties, equality for all, freedom of religion, and also freedom to choose your occupation. However, there are some weaknesses to his laws, mostly that not everyone was considered equal. Women could not vote and had to be obedient to their husbands. Minors had very few rights, and men were given more freedom than anyone in society. Napoleon also implemented many economic reforms that helped France recover from the bankruptcy that they had experienced under the kings. He controlled prices, he improved transportation, and he also encouraged more public schools be built and accessible, and he also abolished serfdom. There are other influences the Napoleonic era had on Europe and the rest of the world. For example, serfdom and feudalism were abolished everywhere. For example, in Russia, there's more religious tolerance under Napoleon's rule, and that is going to influence other countries in Europe. We also see that we begin a time known as modern warfare. We'll touch back on that when we get to the beginnings of World War I. Napoleon sold the Louisiana Territory to President Jefferson because he had no interest in colonizing North America. He was busy trying to conquer all of Europe. Latin America is going to be inspired to fight for its independence thanks to Napoleon's influence. In France, particularly, lots of public schools were built. The first university was built because of Napoleon. We begin to see a system of meritocracy, meaning that people are going to be able to be promoted on their hard work and their efforts, on their merit, instead of their who they know or who their family is. There are going to be civil rights embedded into the law, and we're also going to see the creation of a national bank, lots of public works that are going to provide jobs for the French citizens, and also a draft for a national army. Okay, that brings us to our next journal. Why do you think the people of France allowed Napoleon to become emperor after overthrowing an absolute monarch? Give at least 2 reasons to support your answer. So remember that people complained that one guy had all the power, so why would they allow Napoleon to become emperor and essentially another absolute ruler? What did Napoleon do differently that people agreed to have him in power and making all the decisions? If you have any questions, bring them to class, and thank you for watching.